Can we learn from the near-death experiences of children? Find out on this edition of Around Arlington. Good day to you. I'm so glad you could be a part of this edition of Around Arlington because we have a very special guest. His name is Dr. Melvin Morse. He has written this book entitled Learning from the Near-Death Experiences of Children, Closer to the Light. I welcome you, Dr. Morse.
Well, thank you very much.
It's exciting. We've been waiting for you to come because this book has really caused quite a scene here at Arlington Telecable. I can imagine what it's done for folks around the country.
Well, I have gotten a lot of media attention for it. I've been on 2020 and the Oprah Winfrey Show. In fact, people from Australia, an Australian TV show, 60 Minutes, came to see me, and even from Japan.
It's a phenomenal book. I was mesmerized. I couldn't take my eye, I couldn't put it down once I began to read it. But in this day and time, it's really unpopular, your research into the near-death experiences or out-of-body experiences of children. And you're a pediatrician, and you've been into this research for about 8 years. Is that correct?
Yeah. What's even more amazing to me about our research is listen to who's on my research team. The head of child neurology at Seattle Children's Hospital and the University of Washington.
Certainly has his credentials.
Exactly. And the head of the Division of Neuropsychiatry at the University of Washington. So I think our research team is unique in that we have a lot of mainstream researchers. In fact, most of our research interests are on brain tumors in children and on the effects of anti-leukemia drugs. And we did this research as kind of a sidelight to our already busy research schedule. Most of my scientific papers are published on leukemia and that kind of research. And I think that that's what gives our near-death research tremendous credibility. And that's what's excited other physicians, whereas formerly this kind of research has been dismissed, or, frankly, a bunch of weirdos or kooks perhaps. But far out, exactly. But when they hear it from our research team who have impeccable scientific credentials, and they hear, more importantly, these stories from children, from 3-year-olds, 5-year-olds, 9-month-olds.
Share with us Katie's story. Is this how you actually got into the research?
I really got into it by accident. I was doing a research fellowship for the National Cancer Institute, and I was moonlighting, working at night for an airlift program, which brings critically ill children into Seattle Children's Hospital, and we would resuscitate them in local communities. So I happened to pick up a 7-year-old girl who had nearly drowned in a community swimming pool. She was without a pulse, no heartbeat, for 19 minutes. And yet we were successful in being able to resuscitate her. So that was extraordinary in itself. I just happened to see her in follow-up. And I said to her, "Tell me what you remember about being in the swimming pool." Because we wanted to know, had she had a seizure or had a head injury, something that we would need to address medically. And instead she said to me, "Do you mean when I was with the Heavenly Father?" And I said, well, I didn't know what to say, but I certainly wanted to hear more. But she saw the look on my face and would not discuss the issue further. And that was my tip-off as to how intensely personal these experiences are. These are not experiences that they are even willing sometimes to share with their own parents. And she had not told her parents or any other physicians about this experience.
But you did get her to talk about it on a later visit, did you not?
Through pictures and spending about 3 hours with her, I finally got to tell her of how at the time I thought she was comatose. no pulse, no heart rate. She thought she was floating above us all, and accurately gave me every detail of our resuscitation, including things that the nurses said to each other, things I said to the technicians. She said, then you took me in another room and put me in a big machine, which in fact happened. We CAT scanned, did a CAT scan on her head. It was extraordinary, the details she had. You put a tube in my nose, all these sorts of very accurate details. She then said that she entered into a world of darkness, and she was frightened, and that a woman came to her with golden hair, and that her golden hair illuminated this entire dark place, which in fact was a tunnel, and together they walked to a place that Katie said was heaven. She said there was flowers there, and I said to her, well, what was heaven like? You'll see, heaven is fun. That's what she told me, a 7-year-old girl. And she said that she sat on Jesus' lap, and Jesus said, would you like to stay here with me? She said, yes, I like it here a lot. But then this person that she perceived as being Jesus said to her, but wouldn't you like to hug your mother? And she said, yes, I would, and returned to her body. And she did awake from her coma about 3 days, into after her near drowning, and she made a full and miraculous recovery.
No brain damage or
no
anything
brain damage whatsoever
from
from a lack of oxygen or such as that. We decided, we had never heard of these things. I shared this with my research partners, and we had never heard of this. Remember, we're all neurologists and neurosurgeons and such as that. I'm a pediatrician, and we had always thought that comatose patients were out of it. We didn't think they were thinking they were floating above their body, much less being totally aware of what was going on around them.
Yet people have said, someone can still hear you if they're in a coma. All the soap operas talk about that.
Right, but from a medical point of view, remember, when you're comatose, you're not hearing things. At least formally, before our research. People have said to me, was this a dream? But remember, dreams happen to healthy people when they're asleep, not to comatose patients whose hearts aren't beating.
It wasn't from a lack of oxygen. You found that out as well.
This is what we decided we would study then. We decided we would scientifically determine whether her experience was caused by a lack of oxygen to the brain, by the drugs we used to resuscitate her, or perhaps it was some kind of fantasy-fulfilling hallucination to ease her through this traumatic stress she had been through. And to make a long story short, and believe me, I'm happy to make a long story of it, what we found in studying 25 other critically ill children who also made miraculous recoveries from cardiac arrests, severe comas, head injuries, motor vehicle accidents, that these experiences are not caused by a lack of oxygen to the brain. They are not caused by the drugs used in resuscitation. They are not even a psychological defense mechanism against the scary processes of being in an intensive care unit, but rather they are a normal and natural event which will probably happen to us all when we die.
Do you have to be right at death's door for this type of experience to occur?
Not necessarily. One interesting boy said that he fell out of a tree when he was 3 years old, and he recounted this to me some years later. And he was never physically near death. He was unharmed. But he fell about 15 feet, and he stated that, again, the same elements, he popped out of his body. I popped out of my body, he said. And there was, again, this guardian angel that seems to come up again and again in these children's stories. And this woman also was all white. And the woman said to him, hold your head in a special way. Hold it like this. And that she showed him how to hold his head, and you will be all right. And so when he landed, he didn't break his neck or suffer any injuries.
Oh, my goodness.
So he wasn't actually physically near death, but he was in a life-threatening situation. And most of these experiences occur at the point of physical death or in life-threatening situations.
I know that there are many, many experiences, and many adults that you talk to, just like this young man that had an experience at the age of 3, but he was now older. You talk to many adults that had similar experiences when they were younger.
Absolutely, yes. And they had the same kind of qualities to them.
Were they all religious people?
Not at all. And I'd like to show you some pictures if I could.
Okay, that's a good idea.
Because
You'll hand them to me, I'll hold them up here.
Alrighty. Now here is a 10-year-old girl who had a profound coma, and she came from a completely atheistic family. She had no religious training. And she told me that she is floating out of her body. See, we're looking at her body here, and she's floating out of her body.
These are actual drawings done by children.
She did this to me weeks after she successfully came and miraculously came out of her coma. And she said that there was 2 female doctors. They're right there wearing green masks, which in fact was completely accurate. And I love the fact that she said there was 2 lady doctors there, because obviously that's not from cultural indoctrination.
That's right.
And in fact 2 women physicians did attend her resuscitation. Now let's see what a child who is not religious sees. Look again. Here are the 3 figures, but she told me they were doctors. I said, what doctors? I'd never heard of doctors before, so I said, tell me what these doctors look like. She said, oh, they were really tall, and they were all white, like they had light bulbs inside them. And they were just glowing with light. And she said that these doctors told her to press a button on this box. They told her to press the green button, but she knew she would never be with her family again. So she pressed the red button instead. So here, do you see the same common elements, that you can see so beautifully described? The one child is very religious, comes from a religious family, so she thinks that this being of white is an angel, and the person she's with is Jesus. Another person who's not religious says, oh, it was a doctor with a light bulb in him. And the one child sits on Jesus' lap and has a decision. She wants to be back with her mother, so she's returned to her body. The other non-religious person, it's very mechanistic. It's a box with a button to press.
We have to take a break right now. We're going to come back and talk more with Dr. Morse in just a moment. And we're going to ask him if children of this age could possibly make all of this up. And welcome back to the second portion of our show. We're talking to the author of this fascinating book entitled Closer to the Light, Learning from the Near-Death Experiences of Children. Dr. Melvin Morse is my guest. Children couldn't possibly make this up. It couldn't be a child's fantasy, could it?
You have to talk to these children to really understand that children don't really lie about this sort of thing anyway. They'll lie if they're accused of eating a cookie and, they've stolen a cookie or something like that.
They certainly don't want to get in trouble.
Right, but something this profound and moving, they just don't lie about. One of the most moving experiences I ever heard from a child was I said to her, tell me what happened. And I always ask, I never say, did you see Jesus or anything like that. I always say, tell me what happened, after you were in the hospital. What do you remember? And this little girl, she looked at me and her eyes were darting and her face was contorting and she was frowning and smiling. And after about 5 minutes, I just patiently waiting, she just said to me, I don't know. I don't know what happened to me. And I wanted to share that with you so you could have the feeling of that they are not making this up. This isn't something they've been prompted to say. They are not wanting to tell me these things. We had to spend hours with them, reassuring them that we didn't think they were crazy. This little girl went on to then, after I explained to her I really wanted to know what happened, that I didn't think she was crazy, she said, well, if you'll promise not to laugh, I'll tell you that I thought I saw Jesus. And she herself was troubled by this experience. She's 5 years old, and she said to me, she said, I didn't think you were supposed to be able to see Jesus. So she herself was troubled by, Jesus is something she heard about in Sunday school or such as that, but not somebody you actually see and talk to. And that brings out the point that they perceive this experience as being very real. One child said to me, it's realer than real. Another boy said to me, it is realer than the 2 of us talking here. So this is something they see as very natural, as very real, but something intensely personal. Our research design was completely scientific in our approach. We did not let people volunteer for our study, and more importantly, we took the trouble to interview 121 children who were treated with drugs, who had scary diseases, who had all the psychological stresses that the other children had, but were not near death. They just had really bad diseases they were in the hospital for. If children are just inventing this or making this up, then why didn't any of these children tell us of near-death experiences? Not one of these children who were not near death told us of any sort of experience. They would just say something like, oh, I remember being in the hospital and I just woke up. Or they would say, scary monsters were chasing me and doctors with needles were after me. But they didn't, something that sort of makes sense, but they didn't tell us of leaving their body, going down a tunnel, and seeing a light. Only critically ill children told us that.
In 1986, you published a paper about your findings.
Exactly.
Tell me about that, and how was it accepted in a medical journal? And how was that accepted?
Well, I have to even do some more bragging than that. I've published 3 articles in the American Medical Association's premium pediatric journal. And this research has been very well accepted by physicians.
But it's not just the facts, man. Physicians are supposed to only the facts.
Exactly.
But these facts
are astonishing, but we don't know what to do with this information now. The fact that children are having these experiences, I think all physicians know this. If you talk to any physician privately, no matter what their belief system are, they have heard these stories from dying patients and such before. But let me just speak for myself as a physician. I have heard these stories from patients and frankly have not even shared them with their parents. Because I felt like I didn't know how to say, oh, before your child died, he said, the light, I'm one with the light. I didn't know how to tell a parent that, and yet I feel sad about it because that barrier kept me from sharing something with them that could really have helped them to deal with the death of their child. And that is what my challenge to my fellow physicians is that there has to be a time where we take the stethoscope out of our ears, start to listen to our patients, and then start to share this material to help us to deal with the grief and the isolation and despair that we feel when a child dies, or a parent, or the sense of failure that we as physicians feel when a patient of ours died, particularly a child. Instead of just retreating into our comfortable and safe medical jargon, in scientific explanations, what's wrong with simply sitting at the bedside and maybe crying, or maybe openly discussing these kinds of spiritual experiences? So I don't feel that it's a case that our research has not been accepted. It's a matter of that we don't have the framework to know now how to use this information to help change our intensive care units in our hospitals.
Well, now, explain to me what I'll pronounce it wrong, Sylvian fissure? What is that? That's supposed to be the place.
Exactly. See, this is the great part about our research is not only did we document that these experiences are normal and natural. When a boy says to me, Dr. Morse, I have a wonderful secret to tell you. I've been climbing a staircase to heaven. Our research has documented that that was a very real experience for him. But not only that, but now we've shown that there's actually an area of the brain which generates these experiences. And it's right above your ear, deep, deep within the brain. So it gives a credibility to these experiences, just like we have an area of our brain which allows us to have language skills, just like we have an area of the brain which allows us to learn math, just like we have an area of the brain which allows us to move our hands and feet. We have another, well, we call it the circuit boards of mysticism, but we have an area of our brain which allows us to have these beautiful mystical experiences of leaving our body and at least thinking that we're with God.
Has this changed your life? Has this changed your life?
Profoundly. This research has, well, when you've heard children say things too like heaven is fun, or the wonderful secret, or that light that has a lot of good things in it, you know, I mean, you would have a heart of stone to not be changed. It's changed me because I've learned that death is nothing to be feared. I've heard too many children say to me, Dr. Morse, I want to live, and I want to see that light in everything around me, but I know that it's waiting for me later. You know, they always say, but that's for later. And that's what I've learned, is that I want to start to see that same light in my life, because what they have taught me is something so simple that everyone knows it. Be a nice guy, pay attention to the little details in life, the love of family. They always seem to come back for family. One boy said that he was told, go back, Bobby, you have a job to do. Now, he told me this when he was in his 20s, and he had the experience at age 6 or 7. I said, well, what was your job? He said, oh, well, you know, he has a construction firm that he's very proud of, and, you know, he said, just my job, you know, but it's a job that he is proud of, that he has made and built up from nothing and raised a family. And these are things that we all know are true, but these children who have had this experience of light, these children of the light, they live it every day. And that's what I've tried to do with my own life.
Now, is this light God? Is this light, is this light God? Is this light, is this truly, has this been a vision to these young children that this is exactly what it's going to be like? How do we know this?
Yeah, that's, you know, that's beyond what medical science can answer. You know, as a scientist, I can only say that these experiences are natural and normal and occur to normal people when they die, not some kind of, you know, religious fanatics or something like that.
I'm going to reach over here and get one of your pictures before it gets
well, I
too
think
far.
that's a good you know, way to answer that question. Let's see what they think it is instead of me answering it. Look at this picture here. Now, this is an adult who painted this picture of a near-death experience that happened to her at age 4. And here are her 2 spirit guides. Funny how they always seem to show up, and they're taking her to a beautiful light. Now let's look at the same experience in a 9-month-old who also tells me that this light is God. 9 months old. He says he crawled up this dark tunnel. You can see how it's dark, and coming up to this beautiful light. And he clearly said that light was God. And listen to a 9-month-old's vision of heaven. I could run and double jump in heaven. That's what he told me.
How old was he when he reported this?
When he told this to me, he was 17 years old.
He could remember.
He remembered it like it was yesterday, and he said, I'll never forget that running and double jumping with God. Look at this stuff.
Let's do a comparison here.
Okay.
I would like for them to be able to see this.
Yes.
I want to get back just a little bit.
Look at this now. Here is, now, the woman who drew this painting here is a completely self-taught painter. No formal education, certainly has never studied the great masters or anything like that. But here's a painting from Hieronymus Bosch of the ascent to heaven. And look, the world of darkness, the tunnel, and then that beautiful light. And again, these spirit guides.
And do you think that Bosch had a near-death experience?
Oh, there's no question in my mind about it, that he must have had a near-death experience. And I believe that this light that you're discussing is in fact the light that people say is God. I personally don't have any religious background or any real religious beliefs. You know, I've been a physician and a medical scientist for 15 years, so my interest is how I can use these experiences to bring comfort to my patients. But I know that that is what they say, that this same light is the same light that Jonathan Edwards, the American Calvinist, said is the sweet light that is not of this world, that surrounds us all. And Jonathan Edwards, interestingly enough, had a near-death experience at age 7 when he nearly died of pleurisy.
It is a comforting book. It is a comforting book especially if we've lost a loved one, as many of us have.
Yes.
I don't care. I mean, if it was a child that is such a devastating experience, that reading this book would make you feel somewhat, I don't know, I was relieved. It was a relief to know.
That's why I wrote my book, because see, I've already published this in medical journals, and I have a full-time practice of pediatrics as it is, but so many people kept telling me I had to write a book that I decided I better. And you know, I just have to tell you about one beautiful letter I got. A woman wrote to me, and her daughter had died at age 7 of congenital heart disease, so a lifetime of dying. And she told me that she was plagued with the awful sense that her child's final moments had been in agony. And she said, "Thank you, Dr. Morse, for letting me realize that the last moments of life are actually beautiful and spiritual." She did not write to me and say, "Thank you, Dr. Morse, for proving my child's in heaven."
This book will truly change your attitude toward death and dying, and it is it's very well written, and it is absolutely beautiful, as well as being scientific and based on fact. Thank you so much for being our guest today.
Oh, you're very welcome. It was a pleasure.
And we